was like twice that they didn't record, and it was so
Oh no.
sad. I like went to afterwards process it and everything, and it was like nothing, or there was no sound, or no,
Oh my
it cut
God.
off after 5 minutes. I was like, okay, that's awful. I just wasted this person's time. But it hasn't done that in a while, so we should be good. But yeah, I'm excited we get to like talk about derm stuff. That's more fun than
I know,
other
right?
stuff. Yeah,
I
and everyone
know.
always wants to know about derm PAs.
Yeah.
But all right, I'll let you just do a little introduction, and then we'll kind of jump into some of the questions stuff.
Okay. Well, my name's Alyssa. I'm a dermatology PA. I've been practicing just about over 2 years. I'm from Atlanta. I went to undergrad at the University of Georgia, and I graduated PA school from Augusta University.
Same. So yeah. Yeah, so Alyssa and I were both derm PAs in Augusta until she recently moved.
Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit about that. But tell a little bit about kind of how you ended up on the PA path.
Yeah. So I actually started out as a marketing major. And then after my freshman year, I had an internship, hated it, was taking biology sophomore year, realized I liked it and I was decently good at it. So I started researching careers in the healthcare field. I was kind of intimidated by the path of a physician, and my dad was actually a nurse, and I saw him struggle with a lot of different things with that. And my mom was actually like, "Why don't you do what Chasen does?" And I'm like, "What? Our dermatology PA?" She's like, "Yeah, she's like, PA. She's kind of in the middle there." And lo and behold, I kind of started my path. Started researching it, shadowing PAs, volunteering. One thing led to another. And here I am.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so wait, I guess you were probably a couple years behind me at UGA. Did you go straight into PA school?
I had a year where I actually worked as a medical assistant for about 7 months at an urgent care. And then I worked as a medical assistant at a dermatology office for the other 6 months.
Okay, so you took a little gap year.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So as far as applying to PA school, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, applying to PA school was pretty intimidating initially. I remember it's probably the first time in my life where I realized, oh, I have to do this all myself. It was, kind of hard to keep up with all the different deadlines and all the different requirements. And at that time, I feel like the requirements also just kept changing for different programs.
They
They
still
weren't
do.
quite as set. I know, right? So, but yeah, I applied, and
How many
yeah,
schools did you apply to?
I think about 4 or 5, all the ones in Georgia, and then UAB.
Okay, cool. What were there anything on your application that was like a red flag that you're worried about, or on the flip side, anything that made you stand out that you think kind of made them look at you a little bit closer?
I feel like to answer that question, the red flag would have to be how to stand out. Because, I had decent grades, my GRE was good, I had all my hours. So for me, it was like, okay, how do I make myself stand out? And I feel like I kind of stood out by sort of saying what I learned from my patient care hours and shadowing other PAs. I also did a study service program to Ghana in undergrad and just sort of spoke to my patient care experience. And I think that still kind of helps me today as a provider. It's kind of like my first interactions with, okay, how to interact with someone who's maybe from a different culture than you, or a different background, and how people from different societies have different ways to respect one another, which I think is really important as you continue your career too.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Um, Okay, so you applied to 4 or 5 schools. What happened with that? How many schools did you hear back from and all that?
Yeah. So I was waitlisted on one, and then another one I got to interview and then was rejected. And then I think one I didn't quite get to the interview process because I had Augusta University, which I was accepted. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
So there was some rejection, there was some middle ground, and there was some acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how was your Augusta University interview experience?
Um, that was my third one. So I
Okay.
think at that point I was a little bit more prepared. I was honestly just ready for rejection. Again, I think like after the interview, I was like, oh, there's just no way I got that. Like that didn't happen. But it was, I mean, I guess it was a good experience. I went, I interviewed, spent the day there, had a hotel room down there the night before because I lived in Atlanta at the time. Um, yeah, I'm happy that it worked out.
Yeah, that was my very first one, my first interview, and I was super intimidated.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, but I mean, it was a good experience, but I definitely was very, very, very nervous because it was my top choice because I was from Augusta, and obviously for us both being in-state residents, it was significantly cheaper than any other program in Georgia or out of state. And so I think, at least for me, that was like a huge plus.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think 90% of our class is Georgia residents
Yeah,
typically.
typically, yeah.
So, yeah, they definitely prefer Georgia people. All right, so and we probably I guess had pretty similar PA school experiences. I feel like they always change something in between years though.
Yeah.
Like they're always tweaking it, trying to make it better. But what was the most difficult part of PA school for you?
Yeah, so didactic year is probably harder to me. I think part of it was just coming in and not knowing, can I do this? Sort of like a little bit of like an imposter syndrome kind of thing going on there. It definitely got better throughout the year when you start taking a couple exams and you realize, oh wait, I got this.
Yeah.
But it definitely took probably 1 or 2 semesters for me to feel confident in my abilities and comfortable with the rigor because it was just bam, 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 bam.
Yeah, that's what I remember. We had a week, and I think they changed it after our class because we were all so stressed out. But it was second semester, like right before Thanksgiving, and it was right about the time we had orthopedics, and so that's a longer section. Like it
Mhm.
was maybe 4 weeks or 6 weeks. Like it was pretty long.
Yeah,
And so we had a couple tests in that, and then it was also right before. I think is it green sheet? I feel like this is coming back to me
yeah,
where we did
yeah,
like physical
yeah,
exam. And it was
yeah,
all just like accumulating. And I remember one time I went to small group because once a week you would have a little small group with 4 people where you learn physical exam. And so our advisor was over orthopedics. It was Miss Redmond. And she was like, how are y'all doing? And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna be honest. Last night I just cried and I'm not doing great at all. And I don't know what I'm doing. And then like all 3 other girls were like, me too. We are struggling. We don't know what's going on. And all we do is cry. And so that was like this huge wake up call that first of all, it wasn't just me. But yeah, that was I think the worst week that I remember in didactic. Cause then we had harder subjects like cardiology was hard, hemonc was hard, but those were in the spring and I guess I had adjusted better. But for
yeah.
us, like I don't know if y'all had a week like that. I hope they changed it for you. But for us, that
They,
was like this week where just it wasn't good.
I think after y'all they switched it to orthopedics. We had 2 tests.
Maybe like split it up. I don't know. It was just hard.
Yeah.
It was a lot. Um, but yeah, didactic was hard. And then what about rotations? Did you do most of yours in Augusta or did you go back?
Yeah. I did. I started out in Augusta, and then I did a lot in Atlanta, and just sort of lived at home, saved on rent that way, drove in that Atlanta traffic.
Yeah, no. Not ideal.
Yeah, not
What was
ideal.
your favorite rotation?
Um, I really enjoyed peds. I like derm too, obviously,
Yeah.
because that's what I ended up doing. But aside from that, I really enjoyed peds. I really liked my preceptor, who was really willing to teach. I mean, especially for pediatrics, they usually don't. They with students, they'll kind of put you on a shorter leash. And it was my first rotation, but I really felt like I got a good experience. I felt like I learned a lot about patient care from him and how to handle small humans.
Which we still do in derm, by the way, or
Yes.
at least I do in my practice. I don't know
Yeah.
if y'all
Yeah.
see kids too, but yeah,
Mhm.
that's the nice thing I do think about derm. Like I feel like we get a little bit of everything, like
Yes.
kids, elderly people,
Yeah.
like not super sick people, but then some cancer stuff too. Like it's
Yeah.
just a little bit of everything. So
I agree.
yeah. Okay, so let's talk about derm stuff because that's what's fun. And that's what I probably honestly get the most questions about.
Nice.
With the first part being how do you get a job in derm? So I've talked a lot about how I got my job in derm, but how did you end up kind of getting in there? Because you went straight in from PA school, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was my first job out of PA school was in dermatology. So I sort of got a taste of dermatology before PA school because, like I said, the first PA I actually interacted with was my dermatology PA. So like off the bat, it's like I knew that part of the profession existed. I actually shadowed a dermatology PA in undergrad in Athens.
Who'd you
Um,
shadow?
Hope Cook.
Me too. That's
Nice.
so funny. Hope is the best. Like, she's so awesome. That's what was so cool afterwards. Like, when I got to email her, number one, that I got into PA school, and then number two, that I'm in derm. And yeah,
Yes.
that's awesome. Like, yeah, if anyone ever meets Hope, she's awesome.
Yeah, I like seeing her around at like derm conferences and stuff now. I'm like, hey, remember me?
Yeah, you like created me.
Yeah. Yeah, so Hope was a lot of fun. And then I worked as a medical assistant in dermatology and then I did a rotation. I was very interested in it. So I was like, well, when I graduate, I might as well give it a go. It's worth trying. You don't have to pay your loans for like 6 months or something afterwards. So I was like, well, we might as well just give it our all. I probably had about 10 interviews for my first job. Most were in derm. I did a lot of like shadowing interviews somewhere in Atlanta. And then I actually went to GDPA and I sat next to Jenny
Yeah.
Dixon. And she's like, I'm coming to Atlanta. I'm leaving my job in Augusta. And she's like, do you want it? And I'm like, yes, actually, I do. Can you please give me this contact information? So that's just a whole other funny story too, the way things
Connections.
work. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
So you went
then,
to GDPA before you had a job?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So they sent out an email, and they're like, you can go for free if you're a student if you apply by X date. So I did that, and I was like, well, I might as well go and network and try to meet people and
And it worked.
learn a little bit. Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
works.
that's actually a great tip. I haven't really
Yeah,
necessarily encouraged people to do that, but I mean
yeah,
it's a small world, I guess, and
yeah. It is a small world.
I know at SDPA, so GDPA is the Georgia Derm PA Association. It's really great. Every year it's in September, and then SDPA is the Society of Derm PAs, and that's all over the place. But I feel like at that one they usually have like a job board too.
Yes.
So that may be
Yeah.
helpful. Okay. So how did you? So actually, I guess we kind of switched jobs at about the same time because I
Yeah.
actually asked about your job because I knew you were leaving, but I ended up at a different office, and
Yeah.
you like moved to
I
Texas.
moved. Yes.
So how talk about that process? Like, how did you go about finding a job in a place where you didn't know anyone?
Yes, that was also pretty crazy. Um, started off, obviously, step one, make resume. Then just started doing, general applications, whatever you can find online, Indeed. I used SDPA. Um, Honestly, those things can only take you so far. I think in the world of dermatology, it's very much about who you know. I think just about anywhere. So then I started cold calling
Yeah.
PAs out here just to be like, hey, I'm moving here. Do you have any tips, like recommendations? And I got a reasonable a response from some people who were very kind to kind of talk to me, tell me about how they got their job out there, point me in the right direction. And the right direction was typically in the direction of drug sales reps
Yep.
because they go around to all the offices and they know who's hiring. They've had relationships with physicians and PAs for years. So sort of built a networking community, and I kind of got pointed in the right direction here and there because of that.
Nice. Okay. Um, how has it been going to a different area of the country? Is derm different there, or is it relatively the same?
Yeah, this is a good question. I thought it would be like a little bit more different. I mean, I think Texans and Georgians are like pretty similar. There's still like an underlying southernness there.
Yeah.
They both like guns and things like that. So that's kind of worked in my benefit. But yeah, Durham's pretty much the same. I work a little bit more in a metropolitan area. So I guess that kind of changed a little bit more. People in Augusta, they like to talk a little bit more, maybe, but there's still people. I still have patients who, just want to chit chat and hang out, which is sometimes nice.
Yeah. Okay. So are you, um, like, sometimes I don't know if you can put a breakdown on kind of what you do. Like in my job now, I would say I'm mostly medical, and then compared to my first job, I am a little bit more surgical. So I'm getting to do more surgeries, which is fun. And about the same cosmetic, which isn't a ton. How is your
Yeah.
kind of split in what you do? What does a day look like, or something like that?
So right now I'm still working, about 4 months in. So I'm still working on building my patient
Mm-hmm.
load, which usually I think you'd agree to takes about a year.
Yeah.
So we still have, those yearly appointments seeing you to really build your schedule. So I'm doing a lot of general dermatology right now. I'm not doing as much surgical dermatology. I actually did a little bit more surgical dermatology at my first job. So I'm certainly comfortable with it, and it's something that I actually really do enjoy doing. I'm interested in cosmetics. I'm not doing it yet per se, but I'm open to learning when my schedule kind of gets built up a little bit more.
Yeah. Did you do cosmetics here or no?
I didn't know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I like having a kind of an equal balance, but I'm right there with you, like
Yeah,
rebuilding my schedule. So I went from,
yeah,
around 35 patients a day to now like
yeah.
I'm up to about 25. And
That's nice.
so it's finally getting to where I'm having more follow-ups and not as many new patients because
Yeah,
new patients are a little more exhausting.
yeah,
And so yeah, getting there. We're like right about the same,
yeah.
which is interesting. What's your schedule like?
Yeah, my schedule, I work Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 5, and then Friday, 8 to 12:30.
Nice. Yeah. Pretty typical derm PA
So,
schedule.
yeah.
This is something I haven't completely covered on here and I didn't send it to you, but a question I get sometimes is tips for someone who's starting a job as a medical assistant in a derm office. And so since you did that for a little while and now you work as a PA in one, what would be your advice to someone?
There's a couple of different things. Obviously, it's very important that you maintain a relationship with the providers you work with, whether they're PAs, NPs, the doctors. I would definitely try to maintain your relationship with there, even if you like go on to PA school and stuff, because that's a connection that you can always follow back up on. Whether or not they want to hire you back as a PA later on is great, but they even if they can't do that, they still have other things to offer you. Also, I think one of the most beneficial things about working as a medical assistant and then going back into it is I was familiar with the drugs
Yeah.
and the brand names because I was already pretty familiar with them when I started. So that kind of helped the curve because there's still always a learning curve with your first job. Um, a lot.
Yeah. That's it. So, okay, so that you mentioned the learning curve. How long did it take you to feel kind of like comfortable? Like, okay, I got this.
Yeah. I'd probably say 6 months to a year. Of course, there are always things, and I think there will always be things where I'll call my supervising physician to come in and ask for help. I think it's very important to know when to ask for help. But probably 6 months to a year, probably closer to a year.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, I'll see you like on Wednesday if I need something.
Yeah, yeah. So I was about 6 months. I feel like for the first 6 months, I was just tired. Like my brain was tired, and I would come home and I would just get on the couch and not get up.
Yeah,
But then after that, I like kind of had these phases where there were different things. So I kind of
yeah,
at 6 months was like, okay, like for with most things I'm okay. But then I went through
yeah,
this like psoriasis thing where psoriasis freaked me out and I wasn't sure what to do and I had to really
yeah,
like learn that and it kind of maybe still is peds stuff. Like there's some weird peds stuff that
definitely.
like it made me feel better because sometimes the physician I work with would be like, "Oh, I only saw this once." And I'm like, "Okay, well, good because you've been practicing for 15 years.
Oh,
Like
for
that makes me
sure.
feel better that this isn't
Yeah,
something that I'm like missing or should be seen every day."
yeah.
Um, and
It's
so
like,
yeah, I'm like, I peds stuff freaks me out.
yeah,
I don't remember, and then we see some crazy rashes. So.
yeah,
That's
sure do.
the fun thing I think about being a PA is you get to see like the triages and the new patients and especially as a new one is we get kind of weird stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun most of
It's
the time.
fun. Yeah.
Um, I guess. So okay, last question that I like to ask: what advice would you give to someone who is unsure about becoming a PA?
Yes. I'm kind of like split down the middle with this question.
Okay.
One part of me is like, maybe you shouldn't apply. There's other people out there who would probably give their left and right arm to be a PA. So if you're not certain, I would maybe step back because I think there's a lot of rejection. I mean, on my path, I've had a decent amount of rejection into getting where I've gotten to, and if you're not ready for that, and if it's not your passion, then I'm concerned for you. The other part of it is, I would say, if you're unsure, I think you need to focus on pinning down why you're unsure, and then I think you need to reach out to people, whether it be PAs or whether it be people in PA school, and ask them your questions or your concerns that would be about becoming a PA. Because there was a point in time where I was considering being a PA and then an anesthesiology assistant. I looked
Mm-hmm.
into that for a
Yeah,
little bit too. Um, but yeah,
a little
so
different
I
path.
understand it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, well, where can everyone kind of find you and follow
yeah.
along and ask questions, probably?
Well, I am in Dallas, Texas. I work in Frisco at Rogers Dermatology. My Instagram handle is Alyssa the Derm PA.
Awesome. Well, we'll link to all that and everyone can go say hey.
Mm-hmm.